fact. Independent fact-checking and corrections are encouraged.
Can we get a cup of coffee in here, please?
Damn good coffee and hot.
Wake up, America. You've got a dog that needs walking. That's right, sunshine. Just put on a big pot of strong coffee and get ready to type your little hate mail with your opinions about kumbaya and flat earth insanity. Stand-up comedy? You want stand-up comedy? Well, we've got sit-down comedy. It's time for Coffee with a Dog. You make me laugh.
I'm not making anybody laugh. Try not to laugh. Oh, don't try. I mean, if you feel like laughing, by all means, let it out. But this is not my purpose here today. Although it's my purpose most days. That's me to make you laugh. Sometimes yes. Make you laugh. Certainly not rock bands. I think they're rock. They don't know when to stop. Okay, nice stop. Good morning, folks. It is Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. Hope you're having a great day. Looks like the sun's going to be out here. We could use a little of that. It's been raining a lot here, like April weather in July, except with the massive heat. Just looking at, today, by the way, I have an author on, Sonia Palick, who's also an orthodontist. She's written a book, which is essentially about getting over your trauma. So it's kind of probably going to be a little serious, on the serious side, which just fair warning. I know warning. Who the hell wants serious, right? But we'll get through it together. I promise. I'll hold your hand. We'll get through it. We'll visit the orthodontist and enjoy it. We'll get our braces on, straight teeth, and we'll learn to smile together. Smile, everybody. Anyway, well, I told you I wouldn't make you laugh. I'm not going to make you laugh. I promise. No, I'm not even going to try to make you laugh. I won't do it. You know what? I didn't even hit my, you're listening to blah, 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 or whatever the blah, blah, blah is. I didn't hit that, did I? Let's hit it.
Wake up, America.
Oh, no, not that one. I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing here. I was looking. Oh, what that sniff? I'm not a White House visitor, if you know what I'm saying. That sniff is from allergies. This morning, I got on social media one of these things about 1980. This date in 1980. The top songs in America on the Billboard chart. And interesting enough, here's the top songs on this date in 1980. Now, most of you probably weren't even born in 1980. I know where I was in 1980, and I'll talk about that. Number one song on this date in 1980 was "It's Still Rock and Roll to Me," Billy Joel. Not a big surprise there. I do remember playing that when it was a hit. Coming Up by Paul McCartney was number 2, which I'm surprised Paul McCartney was still it was number 1 the week before, the previous week. Paul McCartney was still having number 1 songs in 1980. That's a little bit of a surprise. And I go down the list: Little Genie, Elton John; Cupid, I've Loved You for a Long Time by the Spinners; Shining Star, I think that was Earth, Wind and Fire. Oh, the Manhattans. Sorry. Steal Away by Robbie Dupree; Magic by Olivia Newton-John; The Rose by Bette Midler; Let's Get Serious by Jermaine Jackson; and Let Me Love You Tonight, which is the one I was getting to, by Pure Fairy League. Now, I was on that tour. My band was opening for Pure Prairie League when that was a hit. So in 1980, that song was number 11 on the charts. Oh no, number 10 on the charts in 1980. So I was probably on this date already on tour with them, opening for them as they promoted their new single. Life goes by pretty fast, folks. I was a kid. I was still a kid in 1980. I think of myself as a kid. 1980, I was 21 years old, fresh out of college, and touring in support. Well, we had our own record out, and that was doing nothing. But Pure Prairie League had this hit, "Let Me Love You Tonight." I don't even know if most people even remember that song. It was number 10 on the charts in 1980 on this date. It's the only way I remember things is if it comes up on social media with little tidbits about this. Anyway, that tour sucked. It was not fun. It was probably one of my first experiences opening up for a major act, major recording act, and seeing how they, and I'm not saying Pure Prairie League did this. I'm just saying the business, uh, not favorable to opening acts, especially at that time. It was on the tail end of the '70s. Now Reagan had not been elected yet, so it was still even though it was 1980, we were still living in the Jimmy Carter era of the '70s. America was in a bad shape at that time. People might not remember. Now the biggest things that America was proud of at that time was a hockey win in I think that was probably later, actually. I think that was 81. No, the Olympics was 80. So probably earlier that year. Yeah, it was. In 1980, we were coming off the big Olympic hockey team beating Russia. It strikes me that also in the top 15, I guess, in the 15th song on the list was "In America" by Charlie Daniels Band, and it's one of these patriotic, um, over the top, sappy lyric stuff about America coming back again. And one of the lines in there is about if Russia doesn't think we're capable, they got another thing coming or something like that. So it's just interesting to look back on that time. Now, on also um, yesterday, and I don't know why all of a sudden people get upset about things or get on a soapbox about things. Jason Aldean has a song called "Try That in a Small Town," and that's causing a bunch of controversy. People saying you know, they're saying it's racist. There's no race in the song. It is your typical country pride in small town America type of thing, but it's a bit of a um, pride in gun rights type of thing. And some people, they get politically charged up by that kind of stuff. But the song is what it is. And my take on that is you don't like the song, just change the channel. This song is not going to make people change their minds, their lives, their psychology, their makeup of who they are. If you don't like the song, just change the channel or change the station or change in this case, probably just stop it, hit the stop button on Spotify or Apple iTunes or wherever you're listening. But people and they want to, cancel the song, shut the song down. And a couple of radio stations have pulled it. CMT pulled the music video because people are getting outraged. The song was released back in May. It's been on the charts, and it just doesn't make any sense to me why people are just so crazy about censorship. Now, I'm not a gun guy, as you know, uh, but I'm not a censorship guy, and I don't think all you're doing by doing this stuff. And here's my suspicion, my conspiratorial mind at work here. And I kind of wrote this on Twitter. I wish somebody would get really offended. And I've written some pretty offensive songs. I wish somebody would get offended at me because now it's blowing up. It's all over social media and people talking about it. And now it's going to sell a lot more. And my conspiratorial mind says, well, maybe since it was out since May and not doing as well as it could have been doing, maybe Jason Aldean's people are the ones who started this whole thing. That's being a little, I don't know, cynical. Anyway, so that's what's going on. Now I noticed my friend Roseanne Barr. I say my friend Roseanne Barr like that's serious. I'm not a fan of Roseanne. And if you follow the program, in the last couple of weeks there's been a lot about her. But she had been on there saying exactly what I just said, and that scares me. I don't want when Roseanne starts saying the things I'm saying, I start to think, well, maybe I'm wrong. But she was calling somebody else batshit crazy. Those were her words. Calling somebody who was just calling Jason Aldean a racist and all this stuff. And Roseanne called her batshit crazy. And I'm tempted to say, for the queen of batshit crazy to be calling somebody else batshit crazy, that's kind of amusing in itself. But who would know better about batshit crazy than Roseanne Barr? Anyway, we're brought to you today by Koa Coffee. When we come back, I'm going to play a commercial, obviously, coming up. Brace yourself for a commercial and go get yourself some coffee. We are working on the commercials for the new sponsors, believe me. I know that this one in particular, you probably heard 7 million times now. But Koa Coffee is the best coffee in America, as rated by Forbes magazine and one of the top 10 in the world, which says America is not number one. We're in the top 10, as Daniel Tosh likes to say. We're in the top 10, but we're not number one. When we come back, we're going to meet authors Sonia Palick. And but in the meantime, go get yourself some fresh coffee. We'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by Koa Coffee. If you are a coffee connoisseur and want to experience the best coffee Hawaii has to offer, no blends, no compromise, try the true taste of aloha. Koa Coffee produces premium Hawaiian coffee, hand-picked, expertly roasted, and delivered from Hawaii to your door with aloha. From award-winning 100% Kona coffee grown on the slopes of the Mauna Loa volcano to the unique mocha beans of Maui, they strive to provide their loyal customers with the best quality and freshness. Since 1997, Koa Coffee has been known far and wide as a product of utmost quality, and their awards prove it. Koa Coffee was featured in Forbes' Top 10 Coffees of the World. This is the coffee Forbes called the best coffee in America. Find out what it's all about. Go to minddogtv.com/coffee. Let's go to minddogtv.com/coffee and get yourself some Koa coffee. And then you can run on the beach because you'll be so buzzed from the Koa coffee that you'll have all this energy to turn around. Hello. And she keeps running. She's juiced up on that caffeine. We are about to meet an author, Sonia Palick, who is an orthodontist and a Canadian lady. Has written a book or a book series, 4 books actually, starting at the beginning of the pandemic, which might be coincidental, right before, like 2 weeks before we had lockdown here is when she started writing this book. And I'm wondering if coincidence, whether she's a believer in things like coincidence, because a lot of people who wanted to do creative things with their lives got an opportunity to I mean, if you have to look for a silver lining in the whole COVID thing, it definitely was that for a lot of people. There were several silver linings that we've talked about over the years, things that, in every dark situation, there is a silver lining. Whether you just got to look for it sometimes, whether you choose to believe that or not, probably affects your perception about it. But I totally believe that in every situation, there is an upside to it. If you look hard enough, you will find it. And the creative flow that happened during COVID, the lockdowns for COVID, was definitely something that I think the world needed. I think we needed a break and time for people who with creative energy to release those creative energies. Now, They were all, of course, the dark side. We've all looked at that. But anyway, she has written this series of books, 4 books called "Leave the Little Light On," and she has designed and painted all the book covers, edited the book itself, self-published it. It is essentially about helping people release or get over their trauma, and she describes herself as an advocate for love. And who doesn't love love? Let's welcome in Sonia Powell to the
Hi,
call.
Matt.
Good
How-
morning.
Good
You
morning.
are you're an early riser, sending me text in the middle of the night. What time do you get up?
I have an alarm set for 3:33. I'm
Wow.
extra early. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. We did send you the link on Sunday. I don't know why you didn't get it, but you got it. Better late than never, as you said.
I'm happy to be here.
You're an orthodontist by trade.
Yes, I
Uh,
am.
I've never been to an orthodontist. I don't go to dentists. Basically, my my belief about orthodontists is, or you do braces. That's what you do. I mean, I don't.
I
That
do braces, yeah, growth modification, surgeries, those sorts of things. Build
we are
beautiful
having a little
smiles,
bit of
that's my-
we are having a little bit of difficulty with Wi-Fi. I guess. Are you on Wi-Fi? I guess you're on Wi-Fi, not plugged into the Ethernet.
No, I'm on Wi-Fi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we're going to get every once in a while get a little spike or something, but we're fine for now.
Okay,
Anyway,
let me know.
okay, we're good for now. Now, do I have this correct? You are in Canada, or you were in Woodstock, New York?
Woodstock, Canada. Woodstock,
Oh,
Ontario.
Woodstock is Canada. Okay, because we have one here in New York. I'm sure you're
Yeah,
familiar with.
no,
We've heard
I've got
about
my Timmy's. I've got my Timmy's coffee. So in
Okay.
Canada, this is the coffee, but
So tell me,
add that too.
before we get started, tell me something I don't know, and I don't know anything about Woodstock, Canada. I didn't even know there was one. Where is it? And is it an arts community?
It's pretty artsy. It's somewhere between London, Ontario, and Toronto. So kind of a little bit closer to Toronto side. If you were looking at the map, kind of locate Detroit, Michigan, and then kind of head east, northeast, and you'll run into us on the 401.
Okay.
So we're called the Friendly City. Very friendly. It's a small town. It's kind of about 46,000, I think, is the last count.
Wow, that's smaller than my town, and I think I live in a small town. Anyway, so as an orthodontist, your whole life, what did you always want to be an author?
I had the idea that I might be a writer one day. I did an aptitude test right out of high school where I was equal for writing, like a journalist or a dentist. But my family needed the money, and I asked the counselor, who makes more money? Because like we need to lift ourselves up here. And he said the dentist, and I said, okay, I'm going to go do that. He said, you can always write on the side. But I never wrote anything. I wasn't like into writing. I just built a practice, and I went to dental school. I went to specialty school, and I've been in practice for 24 years now.
Wow, you look very young to be in practice for 24 years. Congratulations.
Thanks.
I was just thinking when you said the aptitude test, in my when I took that, they told me I would be an architect or a mathematician, and believe me, those are as far from my interest or skill abilities. But I'm just wondering how much of when they tell you that as a kid, that kind of influences if you believe in it, you're likely to absorb it into your life and follow that path. I rejected it completely. Then I remember scratching my head when they told me architect. Me? You have to care about building stuff, and you have to understand mechanically, But so I didn't become that. But
Well, you're surrounded by equipment there, so I don't know. And you're the
yeah,
architect.
I'm a musician. I've been
There you
I've
go.
been a burnout hippie most of my life. So
Yeah, I don't know if it influenced me as much as like that. I had braces. All of my siblings and I had braces. We had nasty teeth, and the orthodontist fixed them, and I really loved what they did, and I thought that'd be worthwhile to do.
you know, I don't have great teeth now because I'm old, but when I was young, people used to comment on how my straight white teeth, and so that's probably why I never went to an orthodontist. Anyway, do you believe in coincidence?
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much coincidence as divine intervention. on this one.
Divine intervention. So that would mean there's divinity.
Yeah. Well, and
Okay.
I feel like I know that now. Like I was laying there March 1st. It was March 1st, 2020. And I was laying in bed and it was about 4 a.m. and I was just sort of daydreaming. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't awake. And a man's voice said, and it was outside of my consciousness. It was not my inner voice. I said, it's time to write. Just very plainly, very clearly, right into my ear. And I jumped out of bed and I looked around the apartment. I thought someone's in my house, and because I live alone, and there wasn't anybody. And then I texted my therapist, like, I think I have schizophrenia. Like, I just heard a voice full on outside of me speaking to me. And she said, what did they say? And I said, they said, it's time to write. And she says, well, I'll go write. And so I sat down and I lit a candle. I said a prayer because it scared me, to be quite honest. Like, it was unsettling. It wasn't like I had a fear, but I just wasn't sure what it was, what just happened. And I just got a pen and I just held it over a journal. And I didn't have a thought in my head that day, man, honest to God, to write anything. Like I had just been through, quite honestly, like a terrible time in my life, like where my whole life kind of fell apart. My parents died, my grandma died, I lost, my marriage fell apart, my kid wasn't speaking to me, I lost all my money. I was just laying there like, what next, And then it said, Leave the Little Light On by Sonia Palick. And I thought, oh, that's nice. So, so what? And then it just wrote, Athena took the great painted steps one at a time. And I in my mind, I remember thinking, oh, Athena, that's a nice name. And Athena happens to mean wisdom, which is what Sonia means. And but I thought of that later, and this story started to pour out of me. And about halfway down the first page, I realized that was me, that I was Athena, that it was this 3-year-old girl, and this was happening. This incident where my father backs up and butts a cigarette out on my wrist by accident, but it's traumatic. And I just shut that book. I wrote until it stopped. And then I shut it and I went to work. And I didn't give it another thought. I just thought that was bizarre. I didn't even tell anybody because it was so weird to me. And the next day, 4 a.m., my eyes flew open. And I was like, serious? Like, in my head now, it was like, it's time to write. And I went back and did it again. I didn't really want to write it. I got to be honest. Like, it was not this first book, like of the books that I was writing. It was about my early childhood. It was based on me. It's a fiction. Like, it reads like a story. And, but I had so much resistance to writing it. Like, but even when we were shut down, and I couldn't work for 4 months, my office was shut down. I could only write from 4 till 5 in the morning. That's when it happened. It didn't come any other time. I couldn't write for 8 hours a day and get it done. It didn't work like that. It was from 4 till 5. These words would just flow through me, and I just would write them down. And then it would just pick up where it left off. I never wrote out a list of characters. I never wrote out the plot. I never wrote out a storyline. And so for me, I just realized, like, kind of halfway through it, what is this? Like, what is happening here? Like, what is this story for? Well, who cares about my life? What is this based on? And it's not like a traditional self-help book. This isn't like 5 steps to, cure your trauma. This is a journey. And to me, it's like how humans learn this. They're going to learn by a story. I went through a ton of healing. I did everybody. I did every course. I did everything I could get my hands on. I read it. I meditated. I was all about it. And when I went back, I realized, what was holding me back, like, from healing, was that I was healed. People were talking to me, not people who had that trauma, like, not from their trauma. It was sort of like, you got to go back and really walk through it with somebody to see what happens to us when we have trauma. There's moments where we fill in the blanks and we tell ourselves stories. And that's what Athena does. And when you're reading it and you're with her, especially in book 1, you feel a lot of empathy. Like, you feel for this kid. Everybody tells me when they read this book, they cry, it triggers them. They feel like a little kid again. And I think it's because it's going to take you to that place inside yourself where whatever you told yourself about whatever happened, it's going to allow you to sort of examine that, to re-feel it, to re-examine it as an adult, because it's the place we avoid. It's a terrifying journey. We don't want to go there. And it's like, and we'll avoid it, our whole lives quite successfully, lots of us. But beyond that is where healing lies. And that's where we got to go.
You gave me a lot to work with right there. There's
Sorry,
a lot. No, that's good stuff. Now, because wanted to ask you, what did you intentionally write it as fiction? Was that a conscious decision? But it sounds like not at all. You started writing and then realized you were writing, I want to say your story, but through a fictional character. And why that? Why do you think that you were, if you feel like almost guided or directed, I guess, to do this, why do you think it would be in a fictional form rather than nonfiction?
I think it's in a fictional form because that's how other people can embody the journey. If I wrote from the I, if I said, this happened to me, this is, I did this is me. And that's a lot of healing stories. When I would read them, they'd be about that person, their story. And I would read it and think, yeah, but that's you. I'm not like you. I don't know. And just sort of dismiss a lot of it. I think in fiction, what happens is that when there's a God narrative and it's just about anyone, like any kid, this kid, Athena, and it's just a story, human beings like insert themselves there. They can embody that character. They get into those feelings. It awakens our empathy for the character. We sort of become the Athena, and people go through it, and this is overwhelmingly told to me that she is relatable, that there's something very real about this fiction, that the emotion feels real, and that they can relate to Athena. I've had guys, girls tell me it's universal.
Right. I was going to comment here, for people who are on the visual side of this and see my body language, I'm doing a lot of lip biting and touching my face. And that means I'm waiting for you to finish, because you say things that I want to jump on in the minute. And I have to say, no, to myself, let her finish and listen to what she's saying. You said empathy, I think 3 times already this morning. And I am of the belief that we have a empathy. Now, I'm going to assume that you have a lot of empathetic people in your life, and that being in the medical profession you probably have a lot of that yourself. But I'm of the belief that we have a empathy crisis and an empathy shortage on the planet. And I think that's, so when you talk about, and that's what you just described there is a whole different idea, because I've talked to many, many authors about why they fictionalize stuff, and the protagonist is often just a slightly romanticized version of themselves in this thing, but nobody has ever really explained the reader's side of that the reader also becomes that person. So the protagonist is the author, but is also the reader at any time. But you have to have empathy, and I don't think everybody does. I think you probably surround yourself with a lot of empathetic people and maybe haven't noticed, but I think the world is severely lacking in empathy. I think this is our biggest problem as humanity right now. Just get your comment on that.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. And I think that the series is a new love story for humanity. That's how I look at them, these 4 books. I read just before I was writing, I had read Isabel Wilkerson's book, Cast. And at the back end of that book, she makes a comment that in her notes, that the world needs radical empathy to heal. And the words radical empathy stuck with me. I thought, how do you create radical empathy? How do you get people to feel radical empathy? And I thought they have to feel what another human being feels. And I think that the reason the world's in a crisis about it is that we're bombarded by painful images and violence and all the ways that we've hurt each other, all the suffering. And when one person suffers, we all suffer. We are one love. And so we have to shut these valves off, because Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to go on with our day. We would come to a complete halt if we actually recognized and had empathy for what was happening with humanity currently. And so we sort of dull it down and then we turn it off and we become remote to it. But that also means that we create more separation between us and others. And that will lead to fear and it will lead to all kinds of other ramifications for us emotionally and socially. So I think that when I saw Athena as that character and why she's real and relatable and why people feel her is she's not really a romanticized version of a person. She is not written as a hero. She's written as a human. And so she's brilliant and she's resilient and she is caring and empathetic, but she is also selfish and flawed and awkward and lonely and all of it. And so her decision making is truly reflected in, when you expose a human being to these emotions, to these experiences, and they're left to fill in the blanks because you were just talking about the 70s and 80s. That's the time frame of this book. And it's true to the time frame. And we're no therapists. There were no balancing counter perspectives. You're on your own, kid, and you just figure it out. And so what did we tell ourselves? This entire generation of people who just filled in the blanks on their own, in their own child mind, to say, this is what happened. This is what I can make out of it. Even your parents wouldn't want to talk. Why are you talking to me about that? Don't talk about it. That's really what happened. And, and then what does that lead to? So I think that's why people can start to understand what happened to me. What story did I tell myself? Where am I in this journey?
Well, here you go now. Again, you're giving me a lot to work with here, and you're inspiring a lot of thoughts about what you just said, and what about what the book is about. Because if it's about getting past your trauma, and again, I'll come back to this idea of coincidence. The world was experiencing trauma, really a trauma that we had never kind of gone through, at least in my lifetime. We were going through it together in the pandemic stuff, and people were experiencing stuff. Now, coming back to empathy, I had somebody on the program, not on the program, somebody in the chat room the other day that said, don't you wish COVID was as severe as they promised there would be? More people needed to die from that. And I was like, whoa, I've known 50 people, about 50 people, give or take a few, who died from COVID. We're fans, band managers and all this stuff. For me, it was a devastating, traumatic experience. But the coincidence of writing a book about personal trauma, because you said, one person feels something, everybody feels it. At that point in time, and I think still to this day, we're still recovering from massive global trauma. There's no coincidence, and you say divine intervention to write that book at that time. That's an interesting way to look at it. But I do feel like, it's either ironic or just really a weird coincidence that, you were compelled to start writing about trauma. And this is 2 weeks, really 2 weeks before. I don't know when you started getting the lockdown. We got it on March 13th, 2020. You started writing on March 1st, 2020.
Yeah.
So tell me what, I mean, do you, and when you say divine intervention, do you think that, we'll use the word God. Is there a God who said, I I want Sonia to write this book and be a messenger to the planet?
I don't know. Like I feel like it's love. So whether you put a name on it or you have a visual or an entity, for me, it felt like love, like an energy, like spirit, like God. But in whoever the voice was, like I kind of asked, like, God, is that you? Or I had a sense it wasn't, like it was like a messenger or somebody like that. The voice that kind of came through me, because I did channel the books. Like the books are channeled. I would just sit down, do the same thing every day, light that candle. And now I had, like I said, a lot of resistance. And for basically the month of May, I just drank that month away. I was trying not to write this book. I was just trying to run away from it. But the words in my head were so intense, like flying through. I couldn't function really. And my whole face broke out in eczema. And I was like, just my eyes swelled shut. I was like, okay. And then I was yelling. Like I was having a fight with God in my kitchen one day in my bathrobe, holding a bottle of wine, just like, fine, fine. I'm going to do it. I'm going to write it. Like, but I really didn't want anyone to read it. It's the story's based on my life, but it was painful to pull out of me. And it covers things like alcoholism and conflict, family dysfunction, and child abuse, physical abuse, and all the terrible feelings that went along with it. I mean, I had to feel it to put it down on the paper, and it was just, parts of it felt like agony to me. But once I committed, once I was sort of in that moment, I said, "Get this off my face. I'm going to do it." And I promise I'll sit down every day until it's done. And it was 15 months, every single day. I didn't miss a day. And from 4 a.m. till 5 a.m., I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to wonder what's next in the book. I would go to work or live my life, and then I would come back to it at 4 a.m. the next day, no matter what. It'd be like if I was out till 1 a.m., I'd be up at 4 a.m. I'd just drag myself to the chair and I'd sit down and I'd just put the pen down, and out it would come. And I would have thoughts about it. I could cry while I was writing it. I would think, oh, that's in there. Why is that in there? And then it would just be writing. And I'd even think, was this even going to make any sense? I don't even know. I don't even know what came before. And then as it went along, I thought, this is one long book. Like, I mean, because I was writing in journals. I was writing with a pen and my hand was killing me because I was working. And I was like, this is crazy. And it took 9 months for me to type it, to dictate it and type it into the computer after I had a stack of 16 journals. And I thought, like, how many words are in a book? Like, how long is this book? And I said, I'm writing a book in 4 parts. And some people in my life were like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know. I got this crazy thing going on with the book. And these 4 parts, and they're the cities I've lived in: Windsor, London, Dorchester, and Woodstock. And the first book, once I hit 100,000 words, I said, that's a book. Like, I realized I had written over 600,000 words in those 15 months.
Wow.
And yeah. And then I thought, oh my gosh, there are 4 books. It's like 4 full books.
That's almost 10 books. It's probably about 600 600,000 words, because they talk about 70,000 is basically a book. It's almost 10 books, right?
Yeah,
But
these are 4 like 400-page books. Yeah.
and I wanted to talk to you about, ask you about that. When you realized it was going to be more than one book, and I think you already answered that. But here, it's compelling to me to think about. And I'm sure a lot of people, when they hear your voice in your head and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't resonate with everybody. People will, or it's a field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And everybody thought Ray was crazy. It's that kind of stuff. But 4 a.m. Was it precisely at 4 a.m. like you just get the every day, like clockwork? 4 a.m. the clock turns to 4 and you start writing. Is that
I
regimen?
would just wake up. It was like, that's why my alarm's at 3:33 now. I just wake up at 3:30. It's like without effort now. Because I just was even I didn't have to set an alarm. Just somewhere around 10 to 4, I would just wake up. My eyes would just open, and the thought would be sitting right there. It's time to write. Every day that I thought that, it was in my head. It wasn't like someone said it out loud. Only one time did I hear it outside of myself. Every other time it was like in my mind, but it would just wake me up. And it was like time to make the donuts. Like I would get up like literally like zombie, like some days, like just like, oh my God, because I promised I would do this. Like I got to sit down. And I realized like halfway, it was less than halfway through, I thought, this is like magical. Part of me was like, this is crazy. Like I'd maybe thought of writing in my life where I wrote character names and a plot line and tried and never got anywhere. Like it was so difficult to formulate a story and to try to write a book and still have a life. And this was just like, the effort was in just the consistency, the discipline to do it. it was enormous. And
Well,
then what came after? I mean, once it was written, that was one thing, but this putting it out, like huge work.
people who know me know that for the last, I've led a long life of different periods in my life and go through a lot of things. But for the last whatever several years, I've been almost, no, not almost, I'm going to say purposely trying to protect myself against magical thinking. Now, I've gone through periods of my life where I've been completely uh, open to magical thinking, and every place in between. But right now, for the last several years, I've been on this protect yourself against the idea of magical thinking. But when I hear this kind of story, I can't help but start to think in those terms a little bit, because it does seem like there's something else, something bigger than us, um, beyond all this stuff. So it's tempting, and I feel my urge to kind of protect myself from that and say, well, it's just it's your psychology that is driving you to do this, and kind of planting those bigger ideas in your head but it doesn't diminish the work at all. Emotionally tough, because I've been working on one book. I'm working on two books, but one of them that I've been writing for the last 7 years, and it's one book, not four. I can't finish because it's emotionally tough, because I'm going through it, and it is about my personal traumas and things that went on, and family stuff. Very difficult things to write, and I find that there are points where I try to write it, and it affects me so bad that I have to shut myself down for days at a time, which is why I kind of I avoid writing, avoid getting back into it. Did that happen to you at any point in here where you just said, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. Stop pushing me."
Well, I mean, that the month of May, before I committed to it, I was, really railing against it, like having to sit down and do it. And I felt like I couldn't do it emotionally. It was too hard.
Were you
And
crying?
oh, I cried all the time. Like, I mean, but when I wrote it, like when I said, okay, I'll write it, and I just said, I'm going to get it out of me, I felt much lighter. I mean, it was very cathartic to get it out of me. But it's sort of like this whole concept of, if you read this book, Matt, okay, like book one, because you've had trauma, anybody, I will say, anybody in Gen X, anybody raised in the 70s and 80s, anybody that grew up at that time has the same sort of issues, because we're humans. And this is when we're exposed to this sort of fear and separation, and we're raised like this. You don't talk about it. You're weak if you do. Like, you're just thinking, it's a dog eat dog world. And like that, there's nothing magical about this life. It's like we lose our child wonder. Listen, every person that grew up in that time, to me, corralled their little self, and it's living somewhere inside of you. That's why that kid kind of pops its head up every once in a while to say, like, life is magical and I want to have some fun, and it's like how to heal that, how to get in touch with that. Because I can tell you that after, and never in my whole life did I feel safe or well until I found love, until I healed myself. But it's like this journey is that journey. It's like, how did I get there? It's kind of like Hansel and Gretel. It's like, you got to go back to the trauma point. You got to come with me here to start from the beginning, because it started somewhere for you. And then when you walk through and you see, this is what you did, this is what you told yourself, this is what happened next. Holy, that's what I did. This is where it led me. And then to understand, because this book will take you from the age of 3 till 18, but the books go till she's 50.
Yeah,
So you get to walk with her, and you go on your journey, and you understand, this is where it comes from. This is why I'm like that. This is what I got to do. And just to realize some things, because it's the stories we tell ourselves, the beliefs that we hold, that are holding us hostage.
I think I've been doing that for 65 years. it's all about, I think I read somewhere in on your website about connecting with the inner child and all that stuff. That is language from self-help, of the era you're talking about, the 80s especially, that we were talking about healing your inner child and all that stuff. My thing is, my inner child never went away. I mean, my inner child has been my outer child. I am a 65-year-old or 64-year-old. I forget how old I am sometimes. 64-year-old, 12-year-old in a lot of ways, and even younger than that. But I talk about my life, and I think about the cause and effect of why I am who I am all the time, and childhood things and all that kind of stuff. And every single day I spend my life reflecting on how the hell I got here. Um, so there's a lot to that. I'm just wondering, have any psychological or psychiatric professionals given you feedback on any of the book's content?
I've had some patients actually who are like in psychology say it was super intriguing for them to read because it's really like a psychological evaluation of like family dynamics, of sibling rivalry, of like parentals, what society, what it was like, and the psychological effects that it has on people. To read it, it's very much like of interest to them, because you can see it. I think as a regular person, like, yes, I'm an orthodontist, but also like in the day when you're little and you're growing up, you're just a regular person. You don't have formal education, you don't have formal training, you're dealing with complex situation with adults. You're not qualified to fill in the blanks. I mean, that's what you did, and whatever it is that you told yourself, a lot of it stems from not being worthy, because you have to be loved as a child. That's a foregone conclusion. And so we're going to make the story up so that in the end, we are loved. Like somehow someone's loving us, not that we're unloved. We cannot be that as humans. We need connection and we need to be loved. And so those stories land different with us. And yeah, it's just an interesting journey.
Well, I'm thinking about this because we need to be loved, and we need to tell ourselves, wow. Because I have talked about a lot about forgiveness and understanding that parents, for the most part, there is no manual on how to be a good parent. And most parents, I think the majority, 99.9% of parents, and people might reject this because there is evil in the world, this concept. But I think most parents are doing the best they can, and that's what the story I tell myself about the trauma. But I do feel, I tell myself all the time that my parents didn't want me. I know I was an unwanted mistake, and I don't know, that doesn't make this a therapy session for me,
Yeah.
but I know that I was an accident, and the only reason my parents stayed together was because of my accidental birth. So all that
So
stuff.
I'm not going to go too much therapy, Matt, but I'll tell you right now, you are no accident. And nothing is an accident. You were designed. You are a perfect design. You came in perfect divine timing. You are meant to be. There's no such thing as an accident for a person. And your whole journey was designed. And that's it. It's the experience and embracing all of these experiences that we have. You want to put the story on it that that's why your parents and that's why this, because of that. That's not true. And so if you believe it, you're going to suffer. But if you believe my version, where I'm telling you it's not true, because where there's peace, where there's acceptance, where there's forgiveness, what needs to be forgiven is you to you. Is you are now, like where you say you want, like you've stopped at being 12, right? Because you've got to actualize and kind of grow into that person that you are, to sort of be able to hold your younger self and say, you were never an accident. That's what's
Uh,
going to heal you. You don't need it from outer, like you don't need someone else to tell you. Although that's what we're always looking for. We're always looking for that affirmation because it was removed from us. We weren't validated as children. And so we look for affirmation. We need someone to say, you're good enough. You're not good enough. You're everything. And that's a true statement. You are
well,
everything that made you.
I appreciate your thoughts, and it does make my teeth feel straighter. Uh, But I don't think, I don't think less of myself because I have come to accept accidental birth and unplanned parenthood or whatever it was. I just think, I've come to accept it and don't hold any grudges against my parents by any means, because I know that they thought they were being good parents, but and again, I don't want to make this about me and my therapy session here, but they lost me at a they lost me at a racetrack, a gambling racetrack in California when I was 3 years old, and didn't bother looking for me
Yeah.
for a week. I mean, I think they looked for me, but they went home without finding me, and I was missing for a week. So,
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
those kind of things.
serious trauma. That is seriously traumatic.
Yeah.
And the first book is trauma. I mean, it's not, this isn't where she heals. This is where Athena gets into it, and it's a deep dive because those dark things happen and they leave imprints. And then you can see as the progression of the books how, from book one, it harkens back to something that happened in book, like when you're in book 3 or 4, it'll harken back to book 1 or 2, where I would sit there and be writing it and think, oh my gosh, that's genius. Like I don't even remember writing that. And they're pulling something from this, from book 1 into this part. And book 4 is where you get into a lot of that. Yeah, you have to forgive. That forgiveness is sort of it's that last hurdle, and it's easier to forgive others than it is to actually forgive yourself, and
Yeah.
to understand that a lot of what we put ourselves through is our mind against our heart. And it's sort of like, because we have free will and we can think things. Yeah, people will say, I love myself. I would have swore, Matt, I loved me. I love me. I love me. I go to the spa. I take care of myself. I like to buy myself a new dress every once in a while. I get my nails done. I love me. No, I only loved me by the parameters that I grew up with. I grew up in a house that didn't have a good example of love, in a society that wasn't loving. There is no conditions on love. Love is unconditional. People say like unconditional love, that's redundant. Love is
Right.
only unconditional. This whole thing about conditional love, that's tolerance. That's what we grew up with. And that's what I did to myself. When I said, it's like misspeaking, I love me. No, I tolerate me. And then when I mess up, I'm my worst critic. I'm
Oh
coming
yeah.
down with a hammer. Like, and I will smash this like into bits and put her back in her place. Like, that's not loving. That's
Right.
just the bottom line. And that's how we treat each other, as separate, because you've got this going on in your own self. And it's really coming to an understanding of what is love. It is unconditional acceptance. And so when you can sort of come to that awareness and to that understanding that, hey, I don't accept myself, I don't forgive myself, I carry guilt and shame, and I'm a brutal critic, and I don't treat anyone else in my life that way. And then at the same time, will say, even though I'm hurting myself, I love myself, because we bound these two ideas together, that love and suffering go hand in hand. Love is the absence of suffering. And until society gets to redefine and reclaim this word in the way that it has meaning, the use of it, like I love you and I love myself, and yet we're hurting each other and we're doing these things, that's not love. That's just flat out not it.
Well, it's interesting. I do feel like my whole life has been geared towards learning the lesson of forgiveness, and there's plenty of evidence. I don't know if we tell ourselves these stories or whether there's something to it. And I don't. When it comes to answers about the universe, I don't have any. I have lots of questions, and I'm uh, in love with the idea of curiosity, but I do feel like my life has been all about learning to forgive others and forgive myself and all that stuff. But it's a really hard thing to do. You talk about tolerating yourself. I feel like I barely tolerate myself at most times, which is why again, I'm not making this a therapy session and a confessional about my own thing, but I think I spend my life on stages looking for acceptance and acknowledgement and validation by others because I can't give it to myself. But
Yeah,
uh,
Matt, you need to read these books. Dead serious. I hope the whole world reads them because I think it's universal how you're feeling. This is how I grew up. This is how I felt. I felt exactly like you're describing. I mean, worthless most times. Just like I could be such an overachiever and do all these things, and it was just never going to be enough. It didn't matter even when I had it all. It just like it felt empty and I felt alone and not seen. And everything that we long for is our own attention. It is for ourself to realize you are love and you are loved. You're not damaged, you're not broken, you don't need saving.
I have a
You
song
are
called "Broken," and
exactly.
but
Yeah.
my song called "Broken" is basically "I love you because you're broken too" is the hook in the song, and it's basically that we're all broken and accepting the ways that we are broken and helping each other heal. But I appreciate your perspective on that. I want to talk just for briefly because you earlier on you said I channeled this book. Now the word channeling can be, especially for people who've had the experiences that I have, can be a negative thing, and because I've been around channel people who were charlatans using channeling to rip people off as phony psychics. I worked for them and all that stuff. So I have a lot of people like me have had negative experiences with channeling. But you talk about it, and I think the creative process, and especially this is something that I'm extremely interested in is creative process. I think for creative people, it definitely some when you do your best work, when you do the work that you know you're going to be proud of, that always feels like a channeling experience. Like you're not writing it, like it's coming from somewhere else. And I've been talking a lot about the Beatles' Get Back, where Paul McCartney is just seemingly grasping for something up here to come into his head, to come out his mouth and say, "Oh, write that down." I don't know where, and you see it over and over again. The way these songs evolved, like he wasn't consciously writing them, he was waiting for it to come to him. Talk to me about that process, about actually writing down. So you wrote long form. Do you think that helps with that, pulling it
Yes.
from the ether rather than sitting at a typewriter?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think like writing with a pen, like I feel like that's connected to the movement, the motion, your energy, right? This is energy moving through you and it comes out. Kind of typing on a keyboard is it's mechanical, and that expression of the words isn't the same as sort of to me like your penmanship, your own personal creative construct. I mean, if you look at this cover on the book, like painting this is, and I just started painting in COVID. Like I'm not a painter. I've never painted anything.
Wow.
But this
I just
cover,
assumed you were painted before
oh,
the book.
no, like I'm artistic because like of my work, like I'm good with my hands and the hand eye and all of that. But in this book, you see the night sky. And as a child, Athena is connected to source, to space. It's sort of she can go somewhere where there's not pain, where there's like peace. And that's the little light. That's that hope. It's the spark. It's our soul. It's the energy of love. Whatever you want to call it, that little light in us that lives there is where we go when we're most alone, when we're feeling most destitute. We all have it. It's the one that says, no, hang on, you're loved, you're seen. And it gives you it could be hope, it could be inspiration. And so for me, that process of, when are you feeling most connected to that? Yes, I think it's when you first wake up, that liminal space between like you're not quite awake and you're not asleep, in that mind zone where our subconscious is quite alive. We're not in a dead sleep dream space, but we're not in a conscious mind either. And in that zone is where we can connect to universal energy.
That's
And
great
a friend
stuff.
said to me, it's like genius. Your book feels like genius. It's something like when you say channel, it's kind of like connected to source. I was connecting to a voice that was coming through me. That's the best way I could say it. It was like I could see the story as I was writing it. I could feel everything. It was like I was in it, and I could hear it, and I could write it. It was like a full body experience when I would sit down and go and write. And then it would just stop. And it was always at 5. It was an hour of writing. And could feel really long. It could feel really fast to me. I would just be lost in it. Like I wouldn't hear if someone had spoke to me. And then it wouldn't come any other time. It wasn't like I ever had a thought like, what's next? What do I write tomorrow? Sometimes I thought near the end, what if it stopped and I didn't know how to end the story? Like, is it going to tell me right till the end? Is that a joke? That would be a horrible joke, if it didn't give me the ending. But I think that this is based on my life. So I always felt that connection. I always felt this connection to source, that I could sort of go almost out of my body, not like a full out of body experience, but like not be like somewhere else in my mind as a child in space, and sort of sitting where there was peace, where I wasn't connected to my physical form. That's how I felt, like where there was pain, I was sort of where there was peace and love. And I knew as a child, this isn't loving. I knew that, like, it was like overwhelming feeling, like, but that's your family and you want them to love you and you want to be accepted and you want to, you got to make your best life happen. So it's like, this is this hopeful kid, how does she move through life knowing these things and trying to fit in and trying to make sense of what's going on around her?
Right. Now, being that you didn't really feel like you were actively writing this, but it was being written through you, if that's, and I'm paraphrasing your what you said about feeling like you channeled it. Did you have to read your book after you were done and say, what is this telling me? What did I just write? What is the meaning for me? Or did you know it as you were writing it?
No, I knew it as I was writing it. It's written for the masses. It's a super fast, simple, gripping read. Like, it's not one you got to decipher what's happening. It's not lofty and literary. It's a beautiful cadence to the writing, and it'll suck you in. And so it's very obvious, like, what it's saying and where it's taking you. I had to type it in, dictate it in, and edit it in. That was almost harder than the writing, because then I was like saying the words out loud, and I was, typing it in, and it was like every single word. And I had to relive the scenes again and again, and then edit it. Like, editing was so intense and so much work. What's a book? It's like, this is an intense project to get a book out. So to
Right.
get one book out, the publisher was like, when I went to publish, I talked to some agents and they're like, well, you're a woman writing fiction. You've never written anything. No one's going to take your work, even if it's great. You've got to prove yourself as a writer. You got to go self-publish it and do this. So I did. But when I did, she said to me, it takes average writer about 5 years to put a book out, one book. Right. And I said, well, when these other books come out, and she says, well, when you write them? And I said, well, they're already written. And she's like, you wrote 4 books in 15 months, like, and they'll all come out this year. So all 4 books will be produced and published in 3 years, like, which is incredible, like, amount of work, but also sort of like a testament to how it came to me, because it should take longer. If it were me slogging this out, it wouldn't come like that. Like,
no doubt about it. I can verify what you just said there, because my books are not that. I'm not channeling anything, and it is a really self-critical process. Like, you're editing as you type, and and it really bogs you down. You're in this self-critical mode, and you can't just let it flow at that point. So, and that's what takes so long. It's like letting go of that self-critical stuff. They say just write. You can edit later. But the self-editing stuff has got to be. They always say don't edit yourself, but I think what I heard from you was your parents died, your relationship fell apart, so there probably weren't a whole lot of people that you could run it past, or even trusted with this very personal journey while you're writing it, to be critical and say, help me edit this along the way, or proofread it along the way. You were probably alone in this, right?
Yeah. Once I put it in, I took it to a professional editor, because I had all four and I realized there's four books. I have to have someone read through it and make sure it's like grammatically right and whatever. But like twice now, it's been two different professional editors, and they both commented like that the book's written very well. Like, and for me, never taken a writing course. I've never taken creative writing. I'm a voracious reader, but I still thought to myself, this isn't sort of how I think even. Like it's written in a voice that's very, and it's of course very steady. All four books have been written. And to me, the books get better and better and better because there's sort of this momentum of build like that's happening. Like the first one is tough, like because it's this little person. But then you get to her 18 to 24, and then there's a marriage, and then there's the fourth book, which is Woodstock, and I'm not going to spoiler alert, but the healing part of the whole process. And it's sort of like, and it literally is like, as we go through that journey, this is like a reflector to what are people's emotions. And like I say, this empathy, because in no way is my life a model for like how you should live your life. This
Nobody
is
is. Nobody.
Yeah, no, because this is how human beings, and this is what my friend said to me. One of my best friends read all four, kind of bounced it off her, and she said, "Son, don't say it's your life. You don't got to say it's based on your life because it's a fiction." And I say, "Well, why wouldn't I?" She goes, "It doesn't add anything to it, and besides, your life is shameful."
Yeah, and also you don't want people thinking that this is not not applicable to them. It's only applicable to you.
It's what it is. I said to her, maybe somebody has to stand up in this world and say, I'm not ashamed of my life. It is not a perfect life. And I have made mistakes. But this again goes to cancel cultures like this. You can't remove any stone that I had to step on to get out of where I was to where I am now. When you climb to the top of the well, you can't pull the rope and the bucket up. People need all the tools to be able to find where we're all on a continuum. Everyone's at every stage of this journey. And yeah, some people are healed, but you can't be on the healed side and saying, you got to be like this. You can't have that book. This isn't appropriate anymore, because maybe what's not appropriate now for you is still one step up from where someone's sitting right now. What they've been exposed to. And they need to take that one baby step out of there. They need to climb their way out of there, and they need clues and examples that they can relate to. So you cannot remove anything in the artistic realm, anything in the human creative. We owe it to each other. People created that. You have to leave it. No one has any right to remove that. It could help a human soul liberate themselves. It could be the first step someone takes to become liberated. And that trumps everyone else's. You don't like it, don't read it. It's not for you.
Right.
But creativity is a collective, and it belongs to all of us. So nobody can shut it down. That to me is really like where, people need to experience everything that people create and decide for themselves. You need it, you don't need it, you want it, you don't want it. But it'll help one person. You can't remove it. You can't. It's the step they need.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming here and delivering this message this morning, and I'll give you your life back in just a minute here. But one more kind of thing I'm very curious about is I've talked to a lot of authors, and authors who start to write one book and it becomes a series. And the question I always have is, basically, are you sure it's done, and when are you sure it's done, and like, is there a definite closure at the end of this fourth book, or do you feel like maybe you feel like now in retrospect that maybe there was more to be said, or not? I just how do you know?
I know because it was done, because it finished. And
you weren't waking up at 4 o'clock feeling the need to write it.
The book wrote, like I could feel it when it was done and how we wrap up. And I saw it, and when I wrote it, and I was weeping joy, and you'll know these books are magical, honest, not. And I hope you read them. I hope everybody reads them, because I think that that's what the purpose is to help, like I say, write a new love story for humanity, which is, it's not true love where we're happily ever after. It's real love, which is one love where we live peacefully ever after. And that's how the story ends, and that's this story.
Well,
And
you're
I just
right.
will share it.
You're right. But I think most people confuse romance with love, sex with love, all these kinds of things with love, and we never really learn. Word love is the most overused word in the English language. It's probably the equivalent in every language, but very overused. Nobody understands it enough to really kind of think about it. And listen, sometimes it's really hard to or difficult to think about and what it really means to us. But just lastly on this, I said that we have an empathy crisis and a short of empathy. Well, we have also a literary crisis. People lazy to read these things. So, and as somebody who works to sell books all the time, every author I've talked to understands this. Like books don't, because there are so many books and so few readers out there. Books don't sell like they used to sell. Any intent on doing this as an audiobook to make it easy for the
I
lazy people?
I have recorded three of them. The fourth one's booked this month to record. I'm just trying to get my tax forms and everything lined up for the distribution platform for the first one to come out. It's all set up to go out anytime now. I just, again, like I still work full time, so there's a little bit, a lot, to do with the poor, but they're all coming out on audiobook. And again, even for readers, this is a gripping fast read. It has very short chapters, so it holds your attention. It's like a movie playing in your head. Everybody says that. It's like they're there and they just want to know, so what happens next. So
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm going to make a prediction that once your audiobook is out, it will increase the sales of the reading book, because I'm seeing this as a trend, and this is more than just a prediction based on just, fanciful thought here, that once people listen to the audiobook, they're more inclined to go want to read the book and go back and hear it in their own voice now. So I do encourage that every chance we get. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful talking to you. I love this conversation, and I appreciate you coming back. I wish you great success with the book. I promise I will read it. I will get around to reading
oh,
it.
thank you. I can't
And
wait to hear what you think. I'd love to come back and chat with you just once you've read
well, you jumped the
lots.
gun there. I was just going to say when I'm done reading it, I will send you an email and invite you back, and we can talk more about it.
That'd be lovely. And
Okay.
you're wonderful, Matt. Sending you lots of love.
Thank you so much for being here. I just want to tell people the website if they're interested in finding out more or buying the book now, ready to buy the book now, soniapalak.com. Visit her and support her work. I'll tell you this. We've had a pretty big audience this morning, and generally the chat room is full of people with snide comments and like comedy and not one word from the chat room. So they've been engaged with and listening to you. So that's
Awesome.
that says a lot. Good. Have a great day, and thank you for coming in. We'll talk soon. Bye for now.
Thanks,
Bye.
Matt.
Bye. She's an early riser, by the way, Sonia Pollack. Good conversation. It's going to start me on the whole self-therapy, self-help, not self-help, but for me, just rethinking all my steps of my. I do this a lot, as I mentioned in my almost every day, or I should say basically every day. I do a lot of introspection, thinking about my life, and not in a judgmental way, not necessarily beating myself up or even beating my parents up or all this stuff, because I do at the end of the day have complete forgiveness for my parents and what they went through, and I know it wasn't easy. It's never an easy life for anybody. But just briefly, my father almost died 2 years before I was born. He burnt himself up. He was on fire, third-degree burns on all over his body. Previously to the incident, I'm not going to call it an accident, where he lit himself on fire. He had been caught fucking my mom's best friend. And so they were probably on the verge of divorce, but even though people didn't get divorced in the 50s, it wasn't a common thing, but they were not on good terms when the accident happened, my father became hospitalized for years. And when he got out of the hospital, I, you know, there was sex involved, and accidentally I was conceived. I'm sure I was not planned. And so you stuck with this kid that you didn't plan on having, and you were already having marital problems to begin with. And you got a guy who's now physically traumatized, as well as having a messed up upbringing in his own life. It's not an easy life. So you have to take all those things into account. I don't know how this applies to you, but I'm sure if you're not thrilled with the way you were brought up, or hold some resentment towards your parents, towards anything, you have to understand how difficult life is on everybody, including your parents. And so I do completely forgive them for all the crap that happened in my childhood. Uh, but on the same token, I'm not sure that you ever really heal from any of that stuff. You just accept it, and it's part of your life. And so it's not something that you can. I don't know that you can. In my view, that can ever. It's like a wound that will leave a scar, and that scar will always be there. So you can forgive all you want, but the scar is going to remain. Those are my thoughts on it. I'm going to play a short commercial. I'll come back to wrap things up. I appreciate you guys all hanging for that conversation. I'd love to hear what you thought about it. Chat room has been really quiet today. It's mysteriously and suspiciously more quiet than usual. Anyway, I'll be right back. TrueFire is the best place to learn play guitar online, one-on-one, get tablatures, and all this kind of tutorials from your greatest guitar players on the planet.
Over 2 million guitar players worldwide learn, practice, and play with TrueFire. Our learning tools and massive library of video lessons will ignite your technical skills, harmonic knowledge, rhythm playing, and soloing chops. TrueFire's educators are the best in the biz, from Grammy Award winners to world-renowned artists. You'll have access to an unparalleled faculty of over 300 top-notch blues, rock, jazz, country, fingerstyle, and acoustic guitar educators. Using our desktop and mobile apps, you'll work with TrueFire's multi-angle video lessons on any device, anytime, anywhere. Integrated learning tools such as video synced tab and notation, slow-mo, looping, practice jam tracks, and many more handy controls accelerate your learning experience. TrueFire style-specific learning paths guide you every step of the way. Use our assessment tools to find your starting point, then follow our lesson recommendations and track your progress as you work through your personalized TrueFire study plan. Progress faster with private one-on-one instruction, group lessons, multi-track video jams, live streams, song lessons, student forums, TrueFire's Riff magazine, premium jam tracks, and much, much more. With thousands of 5-star ratings and reviews from amateur and pro players alike, you'll find yourself in good company with the world's most comprehensive guitar learning platform. Grab your guitar and ignite your musicality. Sign up free for an all-access trial today.
Yeah, invite musicality. Dear music. All right, you guys don't need to get that loud when I'm talking. Dear musicality, I would like to invite you to come to me today. TrueFire. Get on TrueFire.com. Make sure you use the promo code MindDog when you sign up. You sign up for free. You get a free trial over there. But we want to get credit for it, so make sure you use the promo code MindDog. Anyway, interesting stuff today. I have a program tonight. Now we're flip-flop today. Usually I have authors on the evening program on Wednesdays, and comedians or musicians on in the morning. Now I have had some authors on in the morning, but generally that's tonight. I have Cliff Beach on the evening program. Who the funk is Cliff Beach? Cliff Beach is a funk musician from San Diego, California. He will be my guest tonight. I look forward to that. I think, you know what? Funk is a 70s term for what became R&B, from R&B and jazz roots and stuff like that. You don't hear it I don't hear it that much anymore in terms of R&B music and what we hear, what passes. Funk is not, in my mind, still a prominent genre in music, but it's something I'm interested in. I hope you will be too. Interesting. Cliff Beach tonight at 8 p.m. I hope you'll join me then. Till then, I'm Matt Nappo for Coffee with the Dog. I hope you will join me tonight, and I'd love to hear from you about what you thought about this program. info@minddogtv.com, info@minddogtv.com. Go to Sonia's website to find out more about her, soniapalak.com. I'll see you tomorrow. See you later. Bye for now. Don't forget to turn on your radio.
I me, listen to me, listen to me now. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me now. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me now. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me now.